Hey everyone, how's it going? I am Xeracon and I am back once again. Today is a special video, sort of an unboxing slash kind of performance review based video. So I bought a I bought an RX 9060 XT, 16 gigabyte model, obviously because there's no reason why you should get an 8 gigabyte model. It came in last week and I decided, you know what? Before I get this started up, let's just go ahead, unbox this, and not only that, but also for people who might be upgrading from a budget GPU or something like that, or an older GPU at that as well. It probably would be nice if you're looking for something newer to know, hey, is this worth getting? Is this something worth upgrading to? Or just in general, if you're maybe just getting a budget GPU in general for a new PC, knowing if it's worth its, salt. Um, this GPU is replacing what is currently in like the PC I'm currently using, which is an RX 6650 XT. That's something that originally was going to be used as a pass-through GPU, but I haven't built that PC yet, so it was just being used in there for now. So I decided, you know what, I'll go ahead and give that an upgrade, and I went ahead and got this here. So we can just go ahead and look at this as well. So yeah, so this is the Sapphire Pulse partner card, and it is the base MSRP. Let me just go ahead and cut that here. Whoops, oh dear. So yeah, so like this is MSRP, $350, and I really do not spend more than $380. Like, I understand if you want to get a card with better cooling or that has better support for overclock, but like, don't go and spend anything more than that, because at that point you might as well just buy a higher tier card, like buying maybe like a used, like if you're spending more than four, I mean, like I said, you shouldn't be spending more than $380. But if you happen to be spending like $450, more than that, then you really just should be buying, like a higher quality card, like maybe a used 4070, or something like maybe a 6800 XT, like something like that, or maybe even like a base 6800. I don't know, but something like that. So yeah, so this isn't going to be anything flashy, just because it's a standardized card. Like the one that's currently in my computer is the Power Color Red Devil. And so like that one's obviously going to be flashier than this card would be, since it's not like tailored like that. So yeah, so like not a whole lot of stuff in here, which, I mean, like I said, it's not surprising. It's just a base card. Let's go ahead and see if I can actually get this out here. Yeah, I guess they're saying don't drop that. I can't. It's a bit far away, so I can't really see what it says on there. But yeah. Oops. So yeah. So. Oops. Oh, cool. It's just one pin connector there, so that's pretty nice, simple. So yeah, it's very basic, and according to power or tech power up, it's roughly the same wattage as my 6650 XT. So I think that it said it was about 176 watts for that, and this is only about 170. So I mean, for roughly the same power draw, it should have better performance. So I think that that's cool on it by itself. Nothing too spectacular to look at, and I'm sorry, I'm not seeing how it looks like on the camera here. So yeah, so nothing spectacular, but also the PC case doesn't have a side panel. It's just solid metal, so it's not like anyone's really gonna be seeing this anyway. And this really is just primarily just a media PC that happened to be repurposed as a gaming PC. So nothing too spectacular there. So yeah, of course, here's the instruction guide. So what I'm gonna do now is just go ahead and record footage from the old card and then swap this guy in here, and then we will get started. All right, so let's begin. All right, and first up is Satisfactory, and I'll just quickly go over or at least I'll show you the graphics settings that I have for this game. And quick note I should mention is that I didn't think about it at the time, but OBS has used up quite a bit of CPU, and or at least it has hampered performance. So recording some of these games, you're not actually going to be getting the real performance that I actually get when I've been playing this game without recording. So I just want to add that discrepancy here. But as you can see, here are these things that I have for Satisfactory. This is just the general settings that I have here, and it's been pretty good. So like in general, I get around 100 frames per second, like a little bit more, like around 100, 110, 15 or something like that. It's definitely lower here, as you can see, especially running around here. And granted, the game is probably more CPU than GPU intensive, which is probably, some, like I said, going to hamper the performance here and there, especially depending on how large your factory is. And for those who play the game and are looking at saying that this is pretty much bare bones, or rather this lacks proper infrastructure, yeah, I know, but this works for me, so that's what it is. But yeah, so I mean, so far though, it does look like it's been running pretty well here. Drops down to the 80s, 90s ish, but just like I said, during the recording, in actual gameplay outside of this, there isn't much of an issue with anything here as well. And of course, like in areas like the cave, it's, you're gonna get better performance because there's less going on that you can see. So it does, give you some gains there, but you're not gonna generally be in caves, so it won't really matter at that end. But overall, this GPU runs well with the game, so I think so far it's pretty solid. And here's the performance of Satisfactory with the 9060 XT. And that also reminds me, I forgot to totally mention what the specs for this computer are. I'm using, previously, was using an RX 6500 XT with 8GB version. Well, I think it's the only gigabyte version anyway. So 8 gigs of VRAM there, using a Radeon RX, Ryzen 5 5600X, 16 gigs of Corsair Vengeance memory at 32 gigs of RAM, two 1TB SSDs, and that's essentially everything. Now, I will say that there was a technical difficulty where my old motherboard died, so that was partially why this video got pushed back, but that one was a Gigabyte Aorus B550i, and the new one is an Asus B550i, and yeah, that's pretty much it. And then there was an Arctic Freezer air cooler, but yeah, and then of course Manjaro Linux, but that's pretty much the specs list there. But going into the important stuff, as you can see clearly, the performance is definitely a whole lot better here. Definitely getting above that. Same settings. I made sure to keep everything the same here, so that way you could definitely get that good comparison. And overall, it's definitely better. And even if you're like taking consideration that OBS hampered some things, it's still pretty good gains that you're getting. And I think that just bumping up to this, it's not. It probably won't make the biggest difference in a game like this, but you can definitely still see that you are getting some gains overall. Next up is Marvel Spider-Man Remastered, and this is a game that I haven't truly touched on this computer before. This is something that I downloaded just because I wanted to see how it would run. I played this originally on a gaming laptop, and I was able to get a consistent the consistent 60-ish, but when I was playing the game on the laptop, I was pretty much going with the desktop, I was going with what sort of like the default settings were, and I touched some stuff here and there, and you can definitely see how it performs. It's definitely, OBS definitely is really hampering performance a bit, because while it definitely gets quite low, as you can see, even hitting the 30s, that generally wasn't the low or at least the lowest point I was getting, and it was more so in the higher 50s was what I was seeing. I think playing around with this some more, especially if I mess with crowd density or something like that, I could probably definitely get it to be a more consistent 60 plus. But just like you can definitely see that this game is really tanking here. I mean, sure, it can get higher than 60, but it's getting much lower than it should be in a game like this. Like I said, on a laptop, I was getting 60 FPS on average, and seeing it drop this low here is partially just having to tinker around with settings more, but also just the fact that, like I said, OBS is just killing it. But then a game like this is going to be more CPU intensive than GPU intensive anyway. But partially, I just want to see with the RX 9060 XT was, can I brute force extra frames? So we're going to see that in just a second. Alright, and here we go, and as you can see, we are we were starting at, 100 plus FPS, but now we're dropping down to the 60s, even dropping down to like 49, I see. So yeah, you can definitely brute force the extra frames, but you're still going to technically be at the mercy of the CPU, and I mean, as you can see, the GPU isn't even being fully utilized here, which, like I said, it's right now the CPU is doing most of it's doing more work, so the GPU isn't really doing all that much here. But it's better, but it's still not a consistent 60 plus experience. So like I said, if I tinker around with the settings more, I could possibly, keep things much more locked, or at least much more above 60 FPS. But it is doing better, so again, it's better than it was before. But this isn't the best benchmark, but I just wanted to test and see what you could do if you try to brute force things with this GPU. And next up is Crysis Remastered, and here are the settings that I have for the game here. It's mostly, a combination of medium and high, while turning certain stuff lower off because of my personal preference, but that's why I have here. And as you can see, getting usually, or at least usually I can get the game running at higher than 100 frames per second. Again, OBS is hampering performance a bit here, but it's it definitely runs well. This isn't a game that is going to be too demanding on your GPU, so I mean, even if you don't have anything that's on the same level of a 6650 XT, even if you have something that's like a little older, I mean, obviously you could do well with that. But if you do have something like this or newer, you'll definitely do pretty well overall. And with that, we'll just go ahead and jump on over to the 9060 XT. And here's gameplay with the 9060 XT. As you can see, you're getting higher highs and higher lows as well. And because this is an FPS, you're obviously going to have a better experience with the higher frame rate than you would with, the previous games mentioned, especially with Satisfactory, I should say. But, overall, it's just a good experience. Like I said, you don't need to have a high GPU to enjoy this game, but if you do have something that can help your performance, then obviously you're going to have a better time playing the game. And yeah, so the lows, as you can see, are dropping down to like the 120, range, but I think that's pretty fine. I mean, you could probably even turn up the settings, or at least the graphics, a bit more and probably lock it down to 120, but you would just have to test that and see. I haven't done too much with fiddling around with the new GPU, but you could definitely check and see for yourself if that's something you would prefer to do. Next up is Pools, and this is probably the most GPU intensive game on this list, which is partially why I chose it to begin with, just because I thought this would be a great example of what the 9060 XT is capable of, just because of the fact that it's going to really push it as far as it can. It's also going to push the 6650 XT as well, but you'll really see that difference in performance between both of these GPUs in this game. There is something I should add, is like there is this weird, I don't know what it is, but there's something with the graphics where, as you can clearly see, there's this weird line I'm not entirely certain what it is. I've been trying to tinker around with the graphics to figure out what it is, just because I wasn't certain. It wasn't like this in the demo, because I did play the demo earlier this year, and it didn't have this weird ring. Like I said, I'll have to test this some more. It could be a proton thing. It could be something else entirely. I don't know, but I just want to mention that because it does annoy me as well. Now, also in the water, that is something that I really wanted to see how it would handle the performance, because I played it on I think I played this on the Steam Deck before, and it definitely tanked the frame rate quite a bit here. And as you can see, like, the frame rate does drop in the water, but it doesn't drop it too far with the 6650 XT. And I think later on also it really drops the performance a bit lower, where it's even dropping into like 110, 115 frames per second, which really does push the GPU in what it can do. And one thing I forgot to mention is that I capped the RX 6500 XT to 144 frames per second, which it might seem like that's a negative thing, especially knowing what it can do, but considering the fact that the GPU, once you actually hit the water, drops dramatically, I don't think it's that big of an issue. So while it is a bit disingenuous to not let it reach its full potential, I think that in this case it's probably fine, because you're not going to be reaching probably what could be 165 frames per second, maybe 175 frames per second, consistently as much, because like I said, once you get in the water, it's gonna drop anyway. So whatever highs you could have are going to be gone pretty quickly. And here's the 9060 XT, and as you can see, it's definitely performing a whole lot better than the 6650 XT. It doesn't reach the 300 frames per second cap I set, but it's not going to hit that anyway, especially once like you hit the water. And as you can see, it dropped tremendously down to below 200 frames per second once you hit the water. It definitely can be higher than 200 frames per second, but that's only when you're outside of the water, and you are going to spend a lot of time in the water anyway. So similar to like I said about the 144 cap for the 6650 XT, you're not going to be reaching those highs anyway. So I think setting that cap to 144 is fine, because as you saw, it definitely got lower once you hit the water. And again, it's doing pretty well though here. You're definitely staying above 175 with this card even once you hit the water. So I think it's doing pretty solid here overall, and it's doing well. Last up is Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and this is a game that also pushes the GPU quite a bit, and to the point where it definitely struggles to get 60 FPS. And while OBS does play a role in the recording, outside of the recording, it does actually struggle to be as consistent as possible. And the overworld definitely hurts it quite a bit. Now, going into the different areas and dungeons, it definitely helps the frame rate be more consistent, but as a whole, it definitely is an inconsistent 60 FPS, as you definitely can see. And another area where the game struggles is also in combat. The combat actually does drop quite a bit, probably about, like, I'd say 20 frames per second, which you'll definitely see. And the performance you could say doesn't really matter, but since you do have the quick time events, it definitely can help when you have higher frames per second, because when you do need to react to something, especially with countering it or parrying enemies, that definitely helps in that scenario. And of course, this game is also running on Unreal Engine 5, so that probably isn't also helping with the way the game performs, even if you could say the game is probably one of the better optimized games using UE5. It's still an engine that is not where it should be, especially with how it runs on a lot of systems. So that is definitely something that you should probably consider if you are getting a GPU, or even if you're just buying a pre-build in general. You should definitely consider the type of GPU that they're getting if you're playing games like this as well. And as you can see, like I said, in the dungeon areas, it's definitely a more consistent 60 FPS. There are spikes here and there, of course, that you can see when the game is loading into a different area, but as a whole, it is much better at being 60 FPS. And also one thing to mention is the fact that the game technically can run higher than 60. I have seen it hit 70, but since the frame rate was so inconsistent, especially with the drops, I decided it wasn't worth it to have it be uncapped, so I just capped at 60 when I was playing the game before. And sure, you can let it run that way, but I think it's probably better if you just cap it and call it a day if it's, running below 60. If it's running higher than that, then by all means let it run freely, but I think in my personal case here, it was better just to cap it at 60. And here's the game running with the 9060 XT. And as you can see, the performance is definitely quite better. It's not tremendously better, but you are definitely getting above 60 FPS in the overworld, and it is definitely a smoother experience and more consistent, I would say, overall. Now, one thing I will also mention is if you tinker, you should definitely tinker with the settings here, because I don't remember what it was, but when I reinstalled the game and after setting up the new motherboard, the settings were different, and I don't remember what they were, but somehow I was actually getting 90 to 115 frames per second, which I don't know how, but I would definitely have to tinker around and see. But if you tinker around with the settings, you can definitely get better performance than what you're seeing here. You would just have to mess around with everything and see. But still, just leaving them as the settings that they were before, it's still definitely a better experience overall. You're definitely getting above 60, and as you'll see in a moment, once you're in the dungeon, it'll definitely be a better experience there as well. Alright, so here we are in the dungeon. Definitely a better performance here. We were touching 100 frames per second, but it is dropping now to the lower mid 90s, even hitting some 80s here and there, but still overall definitely better performance with this than the 6500 XT. And like I said, you could adjust the settings and see if you can squeeze out better performance, or if you would prefer to, you can definitely raise the graphics settings, because I think that certain settings were also with the textures or something like that was higher, and still somehow it's getting like 90 in like the overworld, and still like in around this area getting something more akin to 110. So I don't know what those things were, but you can definitely tinker around with things and see if that's something you would prefer to do, to get the game to run as you want. But overall, I'm just satisfied. I think that the 9660, if you are using an older GPU, or something like that, and especially with a lower end one, I think it's definitely fine to make that sort of upgrade. I think that if you have something that's newer, might not be worth it, especially if you already have more than, say, 12 gigs of VRAM. If you already have something like 16 gigs of VRAM, it probably wouldn't make that much of a sense or a difference to you. So you would probably want to skip it. But I think that if you're getting something better, if you're like, say, on 8 gigs, it probably would help to get this for like the extra 8, and just the general power boost you would get. And I'm pretty satisfied with this. Again, this PC isn't meant for gaming, at least that's not what I built it for originally. It was mainly just a media PC, but you can definitely game on this thing. And I think if you're someone who just wants a budget build, this GPU will work for you. Again, your mileage may vary. This also isn't the type of comparison video that a larger tech tuber would do, but this is just something that I want to show what an everyday average person could get for, or at least the gains they would get if they made an upgrade. So overall, I hope that this video was entertaining for you, and I hope that this is something that provides some sort of value for you, and I hope that it helps you make a more informed decision. I apologize that this video came out late. Like I said, I had tech issues that took me over a month to resolve. But yeah, we're back on schedule, and as a result, I should definitely be putting out some more content in the near future. So until next time, everyone, I am Xeracon signing off. Have a good one.